Welcome to another Bible study. Today we're going to be going over Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 through 14. That is Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 through 14. This discussion is going to be about murderer to savior. And I think that a lot of us have an issue with anger, which causes us to be destructive in our lives, hurt other people. And I thought that when I read Exodus and read about Moses and some of the things that came up inside of me, I think that it kind of describes the origin of anger and also how to not let anger consume you. A lot of times when we think that we have to defend ourselves, we attack because of the anger of being helpless or defenseless or feeling like there's no protection that we might have. And so in Exodus chapter 2, verse 11, it starts off and says, Moses grew and became a man. He saw that his own people, the Hebrews, were forced to work very hard. One day, he saw an Egyptian man beating a Hebrew man. Now, Moses is more like us than what you might think. Now, I'll give you a visualization on why I think that. Moses is a Hebrew, and his origin is from the 12 tribes of Israel, God's firstborn. But what happened is that when he was born, his mother put him in a basket, coated the basket with tar, and he was put in the river because she tried to hide him because of what was going on in the land of Egypt at that time. Similar to us, we have an origin. Our origin is from heaven. It's a spiritual origin. And so when we're born into this world through our mothers, it's kind of like putting us in a basket or this flesh to protect us while we're in this world. And so that's just my analogy of how I look at it, is that Moses had an origin and we have an origin. Now, he did not grow up fully in his mother's home. Probably majority of his life, he grew up as an Egyptian. And just like how we came from heaven, and we are now in our parents' home, is pretty much similar to me, as like we're growing up in Egypt because of what Egypt means. It means double straight. That means it's very tight. Growing up in homes, in our parents' homes, things, they have a lot of, restrictions and things that we can't do. And so it can be like almost being in bondage as we're growing up as children, because we have no control over what we see or what goes on in that house. And so it's kind of like having a slavery experience. And so on the inside, he's a Hebrew, but when you look at him, he looks like an Egyptian. Sort of like our spirit on the inside and our flesh on the outside. Our flesh probably looks a lot different than what we really appear to be or who we truly are on the inside. And so it says that he saw, or he came to realize, his own people were forced to work very hard. It didn't say he's seen them, or that he's seen that his own people. So it's something he saw, like a past tense experience. And he realized that his type of people, or his own people, were forced to work very hard. Sometimes we might feel that as far as something internally, feel like that we're worked very hard. We might be around people that we might think that other people are working them very hard, being mistreated. And then it says, one day he saw, or he came to realize, an Egyptian man beating a Hebrew man. Did you realize your type of people were not only forced to work hard, but also being beat? That can also mean something internally, because being in these bodies, we have to go through some things, and we're in some environments that certain things can happen to us. And it's kind of like having an out of body experience. We can see it even though we're in this body because it's happening to us, but we're dealing with it on the inside. And sometimes, again, in a household, we cannot, as being children, we cannot control what goes on. All we do is feel it. And we have to bear it, or we have to come up with ways so that we can deal with it. And sometimes those ways are not that healthy. Have you realized someone or something destroying or attacking the people you love or the people you identify with? To me, that was this case. If you look up the word Egyptian, again, it means double straight. It can also mean difficulty or stress. So we can see that difficulty and stress, or anything that is doubly tight, that's restrictive, can work you very hard and beat on you. And that's kind of what I get out of this first verse, because there's a lot of meat in that verse. Because, looking at it, difficulty and stress causes a lot of things that we go through today. And sometimes difficulty and stress is displayed through the acts of other individuals. It also can, by what we think mentally, can bring on difficulty and stress. And we can also cause difficulty and stress upon somebody else. We can also be the Egyptian in this scenario. But I'm really focused on Moses because it's the life of Moses that might bring light to the anger issue, because Moses dealt with a lot of anger. I grew up in an abusive home, and my difficulty and stress came through the home I grew up in. Maybe just like some of y'all can identify with that. Difficulty and stress came through my parents, mainly my stepdad. He was a very abusive father. And so there's a lot of things that I had to witness as a child. And some of the children I grew up around, children are evil, as we say, not really evil, but what I mean by that is that some children do things that they're taught and not knowing that they're doing. And when they see other children, they do what they see, either their parents doing or what they witnessed, not knowing their actions and what their actions might cause upon other people. And so that's not necessarily them being evil. It's just that sometimes children do not know the effects of their actions. And a lot of the actions that they do are learned from inside the home. And so unknowingly, they do cause difficulty and stress upon other children that might be around them, that might be different from them because of what they grew up around. Just like Moses, even though we have grown up into adults, we saw some things and experienced some things along the way that we could not control. And so my question to you is, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the situations that you couldn't control that happened in your life? What is your processing like with dealing with that? Seeing things and past experiences can have an impact on our future. Let's look how Moses dealt with what he saw. Now, you might be able to identify with this. Again, Moses is just like most of us, more than what we think. It says, Moses looked around and saw that no one was watching. So he killed the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. This Egyptian represents difficulty and stress. So we identify with Egypt as difficulty and stress because we know that they put difficulty and stress on the Hebrews. And so a lot of times the names are associated with the behaviors of what was going on with them at that time. Moses killed this Egyptian and tried to hide it. Have you ever disliked something so much that you did what you disliked? That you were just so angry at watching it that you actually repeated what you didn't like? Sometimes that is in abusive households. You can be in an abusive household and hate what you see as a child, but when you get older as an adult or as you're growing, you'll display the same things that you hated. You'll do the same things that you hated upon somebody else. A lot of times that has to do because of the hiding. Sometimes we bury things inside of us. And when we bury things inside of us and don't remove them, then that causes things to come up. That causes you to be triggered without unknowingly being in a situation that you would not even think to be triggered. Something can be said, something can be done, something can be felt that can trigger you, and then next thing you know, something else is going on. Moses seen someone being taken advantage of, someone of his type. Do you see that? Do you see other people just like you being taken advantage of? People that you might want to save because you understand the pain that they're in. Sometimes we identify with our type, with who we are, people that are like us, people that resemble us. And so when we see those people being hurt, it triggers something inside of us. And sometimes we want to go and maybe defend that individual because of what we feel, because it touches us. And again, the subject is murderer to savior. Maybe the underlining or the origin of people who murder is that really they're just trying to be a savior. Maybe they're trying to save something or someone, or even save the hurt person from within. Moses was not getting worked hard, or Moses didn't get beat. So the things that he saw wasn't necessarily happening to him, but it was happening to the type of people who he associated with, who his origin was. And sometimes we could be going on things inside of us and feeling certain ways inside of us, and ain't nothing even happening to us. But because of things that we might think and things that we might, the stuff that we think we digest in our spiritual system will have us beating our own selves up. And so, again, kind of being attacked without being attacked. And so we can see that the origin of all this didn't even start with Moses. He just wanted to help somebody. Just again, seeing somebody of his type being harmed, and he wanted to come to the rescue. But sometimes because of our anger, and we let our anger consume us, it can bring us to a whole another level. Moses' killing the Egyptian was a failed attempt to be a savior. You can help people without actually killing people. You can help yourself without actually harming yourself any more mentally than you already have. When we feel threatened or attacked, frustrated or powerless, killing someone with word or with object can occur. When we feel threatened or attacked and frustrated and powerless, those are kind of signs that if you start feeling that way, that maybe you can put something in place so your anger is not triggered. Sometimes when we feel threatened, attacked, or frustrated, or powerless, we try to defend ourselves because we don't think there's nobody there to save us or to help us. And so the same with, being in a child in a home can also replicate the same thing. Instead of letting God handle our battles or other people's battles, we try to defend them. And time and time again, you might find that true in your life where there's a battle happening. You hear something on the news, and you want to defend somebody. You want to take everything in your power in your hands and not allowing God to do what he does, and have faith that everything will be worked out. Sometimes it's hard to have faith to have everything worked out. And I'm going to tell you, it's a difficult thing. It is a hard thing to sometimes do. But for a better outcome, sometimes those are things that we have to do. Again, that is killing our ego, killing the way that we normally probably would do things, and accept another way of doing things. And so, being in an abusive environment, I felt threatened, attacked, frustrated, and powerless. I was too young to defend my mother and too young to protect my heart. I seen a lot of things that I couldn't protect myself from or my mother from. And I felt powerless in that situation. And it hurts being in that situation. Seeing somebody that you love being hurt and you cannot do nothing about it. It's a bad thing to experience, and it's a bad thing to memorize, because nobody wants to be in that situation. And actually, nobody should ever be in that situation. But unfortunately, in this world, sometimes those things do happen. So when I got older and others started pushing me around, those feelings arose again, and I reacted in violence because I buried them. I buried it, not knowingly, but unknowingly buried it inside of myself. And so when kids used to frustrate me or call me names and I felt unprotected, rage and anger built up inside of me, and I just wanted it to stop. And so I lashed out. And so I reacted in a very violent manner. And so that can happen when you're frustrated and when you're angry. So just like Moses, I buried my problems, but they didn't stay buried. That's the thing about burying things. They never stay buried. It's better to remove something than to bury it. It's better to remove those things that you buried, those dead things that you buried inside of you, especially from childhood, to remove those things totally, just so they don't have an effect on you. And so that's just one thing that benefited me, is that knowing that I had to remove things out of myself so they wouldn't have an effect on me. Things would happen, and out of nowhere I felt difficult and stressed, and that made me feel threatened, attacked, frustrated, and powerless. So I'll react in a violent manner. That's kind of how that goes. Just like Moses, knowing that he was a Hebrew, seeing that Egyptian, he might have felt threatened. He might have felt powerless, so he attacked. Knowing what that Egyptian did, having that authority and abusing and beating and working somebody else hard, he got fed up and wanted to attack. So whenever he seen the Egyptian, he took advantage of that situation. The next day, Moses saw two Hebrew men fighting each other. He saw that one man was wrong and said to him, "Why are you hurting your neighbor?" We can see here that Moses desired to be a savior. but expressed it wrongfully. When I see this, I know that there was a calling on his life. He just didn't know how to express it. There's a lot of people that are locked up because of anger. And it seems to me that sometimes we just take a blind eye to it, not really knowing where it came from. And sometimes I don't think people really care to find out where it comes from. And so those people are actually still stuck, and they have to try to work that out or live through it with that anger. And that might be why, that the jails and other stuff like that are still full of violence, because nobody ever paid attention to fix the problem, the origin. And I'm pretty sure somebody out there knows the origin. Sometimes it's better if you go ahead and put away what people see instead of dealing with the issue. But that doesn't help anybody. If you don't deal with the origin of where things come from, then it's kind of like burying it. They rather put it away, sweep it up under the rug, but it still rears its ugly head from time to time. We can see here that Moses desired to be a savior, but expressed it wrongfully. And so, could that be you? Do you express anger wrongfully? Do you do things that maybe you shouldn't do whenever you feel threatened or when you feel powerless? Who are you protecting? That's a good question to ask. Could it be something that hurt you when you was a child? Could you be protecting that hurtful child inside of you? Could you be wanting to protect that child? And when that child feels threatened, or when you feel threatened, it triggers memories back to childhood. And so instead of you handling everything, it's that angry child inside of you that's handling everything. And now that child is now an adult and can do something about it, and probably promised himself they will never, ever, ever be in that situation again. And so now, it's like, I'm not going back. I don't like feeling powerless. I do not feel like I don't have any control. And so sometimes, again, when we don't believe in God and we don't trust in God and know that God is going to take care of stuff, we take it into our own hands. And when we take it into our own hands, terrible things can happen. Then a man answered, did anyone say you could be our ruler and judge? Tell me, will you kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? Then Moses was afraid. He thought to himself, now everyone knows what I did. Why do we run? That's going to be the next thing in the next talk that I talk about. We're going to end here in this verse 14, but the next one will be about starting in verse 15. But why do we run? Think about that. Sometimes resurfacing kind of things that resurface inside of us, we think nobody else seen them, but the Spirit's seen it and can put you in full conviction. How can we correct others when we've been killing the Spirit in others, doing wrong and trying to hide it? Sometimes we get convicted, and that's even more frustrating, because here you are trying to do the right thing, but because of your past experiences and burying things and thinking you hid it, we get convicted. It's like there's nowhere to hide. Everybody knows, because you're thinking everybody knows because of the Spirit convicting you on the inside. And so that's kind of what this reminds me of. So just to recap about what we went over, Moses is just like us. He originated from a certain place. He was the originating of the firstborn of Israel. That's where his tribe and lineage came from. the tribe of Levi. And so, but he grew up in Pharaoh's household. Just like we originated from heaven. We were brought here, we were sent here on earth, and we were held captive, figuratively speaking, in our parents' household. And we've seen a lot of things, a lot of bad things that made us angry. And when we could react, when we was old enough to do something about it, we did, just like Moses did. And so always remember, though, there's another way to handle that situation. There's another way to handle being hurt and feeling hurt. There's another way to express anger besides attacking someone. So hope that you enjoyed this study. Hopefully we can do it again soon. And again, there are other videos if you like this one. Those will be posted at the bottom, and so in the descriptions. But till next time, stay blessed, and thank you.